Hey everyone, Dan here. We are after market close on Friday, July 9th. Today we're going to take our Friday look at AMC, which we do every Friday. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. And also, if you'd like to receive a once or twice per week email newsletter from me starting in August, throw your email in the Google form, which is linked in the description below. Before I start sending it out, I will shoot you a note and say, hey, here's when it's going to start. Here's what it's going to be. If you're no longer interested, no worries. Here's how you can opt out. But if you want to stay in, there'll be trade ideas, supplemental info on the videos that I do, trade ideas and opportunities that I don't have time to make videos for, but I would have time to put into a newsletter. So, check that out if you want. And lastly, before we jump into AMC, if you enjoyed this video or any of my others and you'd like to share them on Reddit or Twitter or Facebook or wherever else you talk stocks, I would definitely appreciate that as well. All right, so here's the chart that I've been working on for a while in the previous videos with AMC. And we saw obviously it come up, and this channel was always kind of like a pretty questionable thing because of this big rise out of it. But anyway, as we were looking at this sort of flagging out that was happening, it definitely did deliver on that. Unfortunately, it made a big move out of it to the downside, which obviously, AMC bulls, not really what we were looking for, but so it goes. So at this point, we just have a bunch of price targets to the upside. So I think what we should do in this video is chop this chart away and sort of like get a fresh look at where we are. And sort of like the run of the video today, we'll do some charting, some trend analysis. We'll take a look at indicators and stuff like that. And then we'll go ahead and take a quick look at the data. I know that there's a lot of folks that are like, AMC is not a technical trade and so on and so forth. But I do still think there's been clear evidence of buying pressure and selling pressure in different areas. So to the extent at which, it is respecting those typical types of trading activity, I think it's worth taking a look at to at least have in your mind areas to look for. And I also think there's just so many videos out there already with all the other info about the apes and retail owns 80% of the float and all this stuff. So we will look at the short data in the second half of the video, but first we're going to go ahead and do some charting to the extent to which that's useful to anyone. I did want to look at a retracement here, basically looking at from this point around $12 when we saw this big run really kick off and then close it out at 77.26. So let's just see where we are on the fib side of things, see if it's respecting these levels at all. And it looks like it is, interestingly enough. So we see the big, 100% run up here, and then it immediately pulled back and caught support around the 50% retracement mark, and then tried an impulsive move back up to 23.6, rejected off, and then bounced around quite a bit between 23.6 and 38.2, which is good, but then that's where it flagged out and then had to come down and nearly tried to stretch it to the 61.8 retracement level. And this week was able to get back up over the 50%. So I'm going to keep an eye on these levels. I think this is doing a pretty good job of being a guide to the extent to which, fib can be a guide. But also there are some solid supply and demand zones that do line up really well with some of these areas. So, we see right here, we have this previous resistance that turned to support, and it caught additional support there. And then even down here, we have all this support here and here and here, and then was acting as resistance just a few days ago. So, there's a pretty good level there. And then to the upside, I'd look around this 49.60. You have this resistance here, preceded by this support here, support and resistance there, support and resistance here. So these are some pretty good levels to be looking for some moves or potential dip buys to the upside. If it sort of has a run up and then pulls back a little bit on a dip, it could give you an opportunity to snatch up some additional shares if you're looking to add to your position. And this one is a little bit trickier. I would almost be sort of happy to respect that 36.93 price point with the 61.8 retracement mark versus that 34.69, because I mean there's just so little to go off of, like in all of this area really, because it didn't retrace back down there. So it's really just primarily the run up. But you do see it, at that 78.6, it did retest the support level there at its initial ascent up. So I would so these are sort of like the levels that I would be looking at, but I do think the fib is holding up quite well based on like the gravity of the situation, meaning the fact that this is trying to decipher price action and activity from a $12 to $77 spread and run up that happened just over the course of what that was 524 to 6.3. So, I mean, seems like a lifetime ago when that happened. It's crazy that it's just been that recently. But anyway, that's what I would look for on the price zone end of things. On the indicator side, the RSI sitting just below the midline, so nothing really preventing it from having some run to the upside, but also it could choose to have some running to the downside. We do see previously when it can't really like hold the midline of support the midline of the RSI, meaning the 50, that it does tend to kind of bat itself around there and eventually sell off. So I would look for it to establish up over the 50 and make some runs into overbought territory to really sort of confirm that there's some price strength coming back into this one. On the MACD end of things, relatively flat through this like long holding consolidation area. And even then we're sort of like double bottoming out, triple bottoming out right now. So there could be a pretty good push off of this like $40 level, now that we're up and over that 50% retracement mark as well. I would be looking for it to continue to push. That said, the bullish momentum dying down a little bit on the MACD for the time being, so we'll see if it can grab an additional push there or if we're going to have a bearish crossover of the signal line. And even then, if it is a bearish crossover, it's already sitting below the baseline. So it has much more run room potential to the upside than to the downside, at least on the MACD. I'm not talking about the, the logistics of the price itself. But yeah, that's what I would look for on the charting side of things. And if we want to flip over to the data, here's Ortex. So Ortex, today's changes and their estimated short interest, currently 19.05% of the free float being shorted, a slight tick up from yesterday. We see here on the chart, this big run up in the exchange reported short interest, their estimated short interest basically following suit, but staying a little bit above where the reported short interest is, at least for the time being. And we see the volume picking up nicely in this area as well, even though when the volume died down, interestingly enough, when there was this big, die down period volume-wise, that's when it looks like the shorts really came in pretty heavy to try to knock the price down. But then volume came back and was able to lift it back up. Also, when that volume died down, even though the shorts spiked pretty significantly, it is interesting to see that the price was able to hold sideways. So good price strength there, actually, when your volume drops significantly and the short interest increases significantly. The fact that the price is holding, that is a pretty compelling, strong story, to be honest. Utilization is the other thing to obviously keep an eye on now. Current utilization almost 90, and if you're unfamiliar, 100% utilization means that all shares available to borrow or lend at a lending program have in fact been lent. Obviously, as it gets hard to borrow AMC shares in order to sell them short, that's when you can see a lot of sort of bad incentives enter the marketplace, such as naked short selling, for example, phantom shares getting floated around, IOUs acting as replacement placeholders for what should be actual shares of the stock, and those getting passed around the market. So keep an eye on that for sure. Speaking of that end of things, the short volume ratio is still staying pretty high. And this is pretty high for a couple of reasons. One, you have to look at this number through the lens of retail owns 80% of the free float. So the fact that the short volume ratio is still, in the teens and 20s, even 30s at points, where we see that sometimes, when it's considered very, very high ratio, we'll see that in stocks that have, a tiny percent of retail owning the free float. And so the fact that retail owns such a large percentage of this and is hypothetically holding it, I know that that's not true across the board, but to the extent to which it is, that's an incredibly high number. It's higher than you would normally sort of, it's more weight than you would normally give a number in the 20s. And even then, 20 is very high. Come down here, the fails to deliver be the other thing I'll be looking for. We should be getting the second half of June data soon. That could signal some areas where, we were just talking about like phantom shares and naked short selling coming in. Those sort of tend to show up in the fails to deliver. And so if we see some big spikes like we did here, I like to look 30 days into the future and say, okay, they're probably trying to deliver these shares 30 days forward. And so, look for buying pressure to increase on day 26, 27, I guess 25, 26, 27, leaving them then a couple of days for the trades to settle and then delivering those before it becomes an aged fail after 30 days. So that'll be the next piece of interesting info to get in this one, I would say. And then the last thing to look at is, it is dying down in terms of like the spread of volume that is happening on Wall Street Bets. Now, I know that there's a lot of folks that probably floated over to, what is that, r/AMC stock or something like that. So, that could account for, AMC just holding a little over 1% of the comment volume today on Wall Street Bets, sort of like have their own homes at this point, AMC stock. And I also don't know, maybe there's some ape thing. But, to the extent to which that plays a role, I thought maybe it was something to mention, but, now that I'm kind of talking through it in real time, the fact that there are other places for them to congregate and talk about AMC might not be as impactful as you would think. The fact that it's sort of lower on the rung of most talked about stocks with Wall Street Bets. All right, well, that will do it for this one. I hope you had a good trading week and that you enjoy your weekend ahead. And I wish you all the best if you're trading AMC or if you decide to jump in. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.